Hello, and welcome to the second part of this set of technical assistance guidelines and information for individuals who are interested in understanding the BEAD program and the BEAD challenge process. In the last part of this set of information, we talked about the background of the BEAD program. In this particular segment, we're going to talk about the BEAD challenge process with an overview of how the BEAD challenge process will work and why it is so important for those who are seeking to make sure that the BEAD program extends to their address and is equitable and fair in getting to all unserved and underserved addresses throughout the state of California. The BEAD challenge process is the means by which the state of California and all of the other states and territories throughout the country will make sure that the map that will be used to determine which addresses are eligible for BEAD funding is accurate. This is the way in which the map will be improved upon and perfected. The BEAD challenge process is the way that the state of California can take the FCC's National Broadband Map, which is an extensive but imperfect set of data about which locations throughout the United States are unserved, underserved, and served. And the state of California can improve on it by soliciting challenges and better data from entities throughout the state. The challenge process is thus an effort to determine whether the existing data in the FCC's National Broadband Map are correct, or whether they need to be corrected and the map improved. Challengers, as part of the challenge process, are thus in a position to provide information and evidence to the state of California through the California Public Utilities Commission, which is administering this program, to provide that evidence in order to improve upon that FCC map and make it as accurate as possible for determining where BEAD funding will go. Now, this is, of course, incredibly important because that map will determine which locations are unserved and underserved and thus eligible for BEAD funding, which will be $1.86 billion to the state of California. This represents a unique and singular opportunity for members of the public and the organizations engaged in broadband planning and trying to protect the interests of their communities to improve on the FCC's broadband data map. In this way, you are in a position to provide evidence that a particular location is unserved and underserved and have that evidence analyzed and adjudicated by the CPUC. This will not only make sure that there is better data as the basis for allocating funds under the BEAD program, but also for future programs and future policymaking. Better data just makes for better policymaking. So let's talk about what the challenge process allows for. It allows for challenges to certain kinds of information on the FCC's map. The map shows locations, including their speeds and whether internet is available at those speeds or not, and other attributes of internet service, including things like latency, data caps, and the type of technology that serve those locations. And it is possible to challenge those data if the map is showing a location as having those internet services at particular speeds, but that is not actually the case. It can be challenged to show that a location shown as served on the map is actually unserved or underserved. It's also possible to challenge the map about whether a community anchor institution exists on the map or should be added, and whether it's accurately identified and whether it has the service that would be considered served for community anchor institutions. Finally, in related categories, enforceable commitments and planned services, it is possible to challenge the map by noting that while a particular area may be unserved currently, particular area or address, there exists a plan for service to come there, or an enforceable commitment, meaning an entity has made a commitment to build service there, and that commitment is enforceable. It is binding, which means that there is service coming there soon, and those locations will therefore be served and should not be shown as unserved on the map. These are the categories of challenge for the challenge process. Given that this webinar and toolkit information is designed for members of the public, we should note that the internet availability and speeds and other kinds of attributes is likely to be the item on which members of the public, individuals, are most likely to provide challenges based on their own experience at their own addresses, in order to provide evidence that the information on the map is not accurate. All of these different items are the ways in which challenges can be the types of challenges that can be brought as part of the challenge process. And these challenges are going to require, in each case, not only a challenge, but also evidence to support the challenger's contention that there is not adequate service at a given location because of one of these elements. More detail later in this webinar on all of these challenge types. It's also important to note that challenges will be able to be aggregated based on multiple challenges, so that a particular location or a particular area or a multi-dwelling unit, that is to say a building, can be shown in its entirety not actually served if a subset of locations within that area or that multi-dwelling unit building are successfully challenged. What that means is that if there are 6 or more locations that are shown as inaccurately presented on the map within a census block group, that entire census block group would be presumed then not to be served, with those 6 locations, thus flipping the presumption of the entire census block group for purposes of a particular provider and a particular technology. Similarly, in a multi-dwelling unit, a building, if there are multiple locations, that is to say 2 within a building of 50 units and at least 3 for larger buildings, 1 unit for buildings with less than 15 units, 2 units for buildings of between 16 and 24 units, and at least 3 units for larger buildings. If those are all shown based on the same technology and provider as being challenged with sufficient evidence, the entire building would then be presumed to not be served based on that smaller subset of locations. As you can see, in this way, the availability of a certain number of evidence-based challenges can be used to trigger a change for an entire census block group or multi-dwelling building. So let's talk about what the the challenge process is going to look like from a timing standpoint. We don't have exact dates yet on when this will happen because much of this is based on when certain kinds of federal approvals are received by the CPUC to the plans that are in place. But at some point this summer, the CPUC will publish all of the locations that it believes preliminarily are eligible for BEAD funding. And there will be at least 7 days before the challenge phase of the challenge process then begins for that information to be absorbed. And then for the next 30 days, there will be opportunity to challenge. A 2-week period then in which the CPUC will review the challenges to ensure that there was evidence provided as part of them. And for those that do clear that review, there will then be a 30-day period for rebutters to come back and rebut challenge phase evidence if they believe they have such evidence to rebut with. Finally, there will be a 30-day period in which the CPUC will review all of the evidence submitted by the parties and make a determination, leading to a final list of eligible locations which will be submitted to the federal government for review and approval. As I said, that process will start sometime this summer. Now, let's talk about who can submit a challenge, because it's important to note that individuals, members of the public, are not eligible under federal rules to submit a challenge. Local and tribal governments are, nonprofit organizations are, and broadband service providers are. But this set of webinars and this toolkit is designed to help members of the public, individuals who would like to participate in the challenge process, to know how they can make their evidence available to local governments, tribal governments, and nonprofit organizations, who may then be able to take the evidence provided by members of the public and submit that evidence to the CPUC as part of the challenge process. Given the importance of the challenge process, the CPUC wants to be sure that individuals have the opportunity and the knowledge to be able to submit challenges with the relevant evidence, and then enable eligible challengers who are allowed under federal law to submit the challenges to the CPUC to submit those on behalf of those individuals. In the next segment of this webinar and toolkit, we will describe in detail how members of the public, any individual, can collect the evidence and submit the challenge evidence to allow eligible challengers to then, for their part, submit those challenges and evidence themselves to the CPUC to be considered as part of the challenge process.